But let's begin on day 4 of the widening war with Iran. The State Department is now urging Americans in 13 countries around the region to depart immediately. 6 American service members have been killed so far, at least 18 others seriously wounded. An aid group in Iran said nearly 800 people have been killed there. Other reports suggest that the number is more likely in the thousands. In his first public comments from the White House yesterday, President Trump defended his decision to act.
An Iranian regime armed with long-range missiles and nuclear weapons would be an intolerable threat to the Middle East, but also to the American people. This was our last best chance to strike.
This morning, Iranian drones struck the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. It followed a similar strike on the U.S. Embassy in Kuwait. CBS News chief correspondent Matt Gutman has the latest from the region on the continued fighting.
With those flashes of fire overnight, explosions rocked Beirut. The war expanding this morning to another front, with tanks and troops, Israel announcing the deployment of ground forces into southern Lebanon. The U.S. Israeli war with Iran is now entering its 4th day after that surprise strike Saturday on Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, which also killed dozens of senior Iranian officials. Israel releasing this video of its destruction of what it said was a regime headquarters complex over the weekend, also a main target for the U.S. and Israel missile launchers.
This was our last best chance to strike, what we're doing right now, and eliminate the intolerable threats posed by this sick and sinister regime.
The battered regime tried to broadcast strength today with this propaganda video of their underground stockpiles of explosive drones. Buildings leveled across Iran amidst clouds of dust. The wounded lay on rubble-clogged streets. Iran state media claiming nearly 800 people were killed in strikes, over 150 of them schoolgirls in a strike on Minab. Their coffins carried through the streets this morning. And in retaliation, Iran firing wave after wave of drones and missiles at 11 countries in the region, including Israel. One missile obliterating this neighborhood near Jerusalem.
The missile impacted about 15-20 yards in that direction, and a combination of debris and a powerful shockwave literally blew this house down. The only thing that's still standing is that wall.
9 were killed, including several in the bomb shelter that collapsed on Mazal Amari.
They died right next to you, the mother and the son?
I see the mother and the baby on the floor. She's doing like this, and the little boy, a lot of blood in his face. He's 4 years old. And then the mother in the hospital, the grandmother died.
All right, Matt Gutman reporting for us. Thank you, Matt.
For more on this, CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand is at the White House. Natalie, good to see you. President Trump sent Congress a war powers resolution yesterday. That was multiple days after the U.S. launched those strikes on Iran. What do we know?
Kelly and Vlad, good to be with you. Well, the War Powers Act of 1973 says that the administration needs to notify Congress within 48 hours of deploying forces into, quote, hostilities. Now, the administration arguing that they achieved that with the Gang of Eight briefing by Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And then we also have this official notification, which, again, cites the administration's argument about Iran's nuclear ambitions and missiles programs. It goes on to say these strikes were undertaken to protect U.S. forces in the region, protect the homeland, advance U.S. national interests, including free flow of maritime commerce through the Strait of Hormuz, and in collective self-defense of regional allies, including Israel. Now, the administration in this letter goes on to say no U.S. ground forces were used, but also notes that it's not possible right now to know the full scope and duration of military operations that might be necessary. It is important to note that that War Powers Resolution, the act, the law passed by Congress, is supposed to limit engagement to 60 to 90 days without further congressional authorization. Kelly and Vlad.
All right, Natalie, the administration, the president, has offered shifting rationale for this war. It's almost as if they can't get their story straight. We've heard from Marco Rubio. We've heard from the president. I want to play a little sound for our viewers, and then let's talk about it.
We discussed with them 10 years of no enrichment whatsoever, and we would pay for the fuel, and it was flatly rejected. But we then went back for the third meeting just to give it the last college try, and of course, they thought they wanted us to report positivity, it was not positive, that meeting.
I referenced Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, Natalie, who, in speaking to reporters, suggested that the United States was not going to be able to prevent Israel from attacking Iran. And so that was why the U.S. had to join Israel in these attacks to prevent attacks on American military installations. We've heard the House Speaker Mike Johnson saying that these attacks were designed to be preemptive. Have we gotten a sort of a thorough through line as to exactly what is happening and ultimately what the end game is? Because we understand now what the goals are. Secretary Hegseth and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, laid it out very clearly yesterday: to destroy Iran's ballistic missile capabilities, to destroy their navy, to destroy their security apparatus, and to take out their leadership, which they have done. But then what happens after?
Yeah, so that's the big question on everyone's mind, including lawmakers who have been critical of this. Democratic lawmakers accuse the administration of not having a clear plan or strategy, especially, with the supreme leader now killed. The question is who takes over next. As far as the clip that we played, that was Special Envoy Steve Witkoff describing what, in the administration's view, was a breakdown of the negotiations. We know that, active diplomacy was underway, but the administration clearly not happy with how that was going. And that was also cited as a justification that they were not getting anywhere with these ongoing talks. You also referenced Secretary of State Rubio's comments after the Gang of Eight briefing, and also two lawmakers in which he said that they had information Israel was going to strike Iran, and then if Iran retaliated, that would put U.S. forces in harm's way. So that was a bit of a different explanation. That explanation has triggered Republican lawmakers to call this a defensive move. There's a lot of division on Capitol Hill, and as you noted, big questions about what happens next.
Natalie, before I let you go, is it unusual to you to see the administration reacting directly to people who are very loud and vocal in the MAGA sphere? In other words, MAGA proponents of the president who have been pretty much in lockstep with him for the course of not just this second term, but the first term as well, who are asking questions about the rationale for this war, and having the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, or even the president of the United States commenting on people like Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, Matt Walsh, et cetera.
Well, it kind of speaks to, the concerns about getting involved in another endless war that's been raised. And it also, again, speaks to the kind of the mixed messaging that we are hearing from the administration and trying to justify this with so many questions and so many within that MAGA base saying that they don't want another regime change war. We heard Secretary Hegseth clearly say yesterday that this is not a regime change war, not an endless war, but the regime did in fact change. So again, who takes over now? And we don't have an answer from the administration about who they would like to see in that position.
All right, Natalie Brand, thank you.